Have you ever noticed something that others around you simply don't see? Maybe it's a pattern in people's behavior, a truth about society, or even a hidden side of someone you know. At first, it can feel powerful, like you've unlocked a secret code of reality. But there's also a danger in seeing what others don't. Today, I want to explore this fascinating idea through the lens of psychology, particularly Carl Jung's insights into perception, the unconscious, and individuation. But don't worry, this won't be a heavy academic lecture. I'll keep it simple, clear, and connected to everyday life. So, let's dive into why seeing what others don't can be both a gift and a curse, and what it really means for you and me. The gift of perception. Let's start with the obvious. Being able to see things differently is usually seen as a strength. Think about inventors, artists, or visionaries. People like Leonardo da Vinci, Nikola Tesla, or even Steve Jobs. They all saw possibilities that most people couldn't. In everyday life, this could be as simple as noticing when a friend is pretending to be okay, but is actually struggling, or recognizing a toxic workplace dynamic long before it explodes. This kind of perception can save us from harm, help others, and even lead to great achievements. But here's a twist. The very ability to see what others don't often makes life harder, because when people around you don't share that vision, they may resist it, or even resist you. The loneliness of seeing differently. Imagine you're in a group of friends and you notice that one person is manipulating the others for attention. Everyone else seems to be enjoying the jokes, laughing along, but you see through it. You sense the insecurity, the subtle power play. Now, what happens if you point it out? Most likely, people will dismiss you, or worse, turn against you. They might call you too sensitive, paranoid, or accuse you of spoiling the fun. This is one of the dangers of seeing what others don't. You risk isolation. People often prefer the comfort of shared illusions over the discomfort of hard truths. In Jungian psychology, this connects to the idea of the collective unconscious, the shared myths, stories, and archetypes that bind society together. When you step outside of that, when you question it or see beyond it, you threaten the fabric of the group, and groups don't like being threatened. Everyday examples. Let me give you some everyday examples. Workplace. You notice that your company's values are just words on paper, while the culture is toxic. But others prefer to ignore it because speaking up might risk their job. You become the troublemaker just for pointing out reality. Relationships. You realize a partner or friend is emotionally manipulative. When you say something, others call you dramatic or say, "That's just how they are." You feel alone in your perception. Society. Maybe you see that a certain trend, ideology, or cultural belief is harmful. You question it, but instead of thoughtful debate, you get attacked for not following the crowd. And these situations aren't just frustrating, they can make you doubt yourself. Am I crazy? Am I imagining things? That self-doubt is another danger of seeing what others don't. The shadow of awareness. Now let's go deeper. Carl Jung introduced the concept of the shadow, the parts of ourselves and our society that we don't want to acknowledge. When you see what others don't, often what you're really seeing is someone's shadow. Think about it. You notice when a person acts arrogant, but you sense that deep down they're insecure. Or you see through a political leader's polished image and recognize their hunger for power. What you're perceiving is the shadow, the hidden truth beneath the mask. The danger here is not just social rejection, it's also that the shadow fights back. People hate having their hidden flaws exposed, even directly. They may attack you for seeing it because your perception makes them uncomfortable. Cultural reflection. We can see this pattern throughout history and culture. Prophets, philosophers, and thinkers who revealed truths before society was ready were often ridiculed, silenced, or even punished. Socrates was condemned for corrupting the youth of Athens simply because he encouraged them to question. Galileo was placed under house arrest for suggesting the earth revolved around the sun. More recently, whistleblowers who expose corruption are often treated as criminals instead of heroes. In each case, these individuals saw what others didn't or didn't want to see, and the cost of their perception was heavy. My personal reflection. Honestly, I felt this in my own life too. There are moments when I see patterns in people or situations that others completely miss. And while it feels validating when I'm proven right later, at the time, it's uncomfortable. It feels like standing alone in a crowded room, shouting about a fire that only you can smell. That's why I think Jung's perspective is so important. He reminds us that seeing differently is not just a blessing, it's also a burden. And learning how to carry that burden wisely is part of the individuation process, the journey of becoming fully ourselves. Why does society often resist those who see what others don't? The answer lies in comfort. Most people prefer stability and predictability, even if it's based on illusion. Questioning those illusions feels dangerous because it shakes the ground beneath them. Think of it like this. Society works like a stage play. Everyone has their role, their lines, their costumes. Now imagine someone suddenly stands up and says, "Hey, this is just a play. None of this is real." The audience doesn't thank them, they get angry, because the illusion is what keeps everything moving smoothly. This is exactly why individuals who see differently are often labeled as outsiders, rebels, or weird. The group instinctively protects itself from anything that threatens its unity, even if that unity is built on denial. The psychological toll of being misunderstood. Now, let's talk about the inner struggle, because it's not just about how others react, it's also about what it does to you. When you constantly see things others don't, you may experience doubt. Maybe I'm just imagining it. Maybe they're right and I'm wrong. Isolation, feeling like nobody truly understands you. Frustration, watching others get trapped in problems you already saw coming. Exhaustion, carrying the weight of knowledge without being able to share it. This toll can be heavy. In fact, Jung himself often spoke about the price of consciousness. The more aware you are, the more burden you carry. It's a bit like waking up earlier than everyone else in the house. You see the mess, the broken things, the work that needs to be done, but everyone else is still asleep. You can either clean it alone or you wait, lonely, restless, until they wake up. Everyday example, the friend who sees too much. I think many of us can relate to this. Imagine you have a friend who always notices red flags in relationships, maybe even before they officially start dating someone. They'll say things like, "I don't trust this person," or "that behavior doesn't sit right with me." Most of the time, people ignore them. They'll say, "You're too judgmental," or "You don't understand." Months later, when the relationship collapses in the exact way your friend predicted, suddenly everyone remembers, "Wow, you were right all along." But here's the problem. Being proven right doesn't erase the loneliness of being dismissed. That friend carries the burden of seeing what others refuse to see, and that comes with emotional costs. Jungian pathology connection. Archetypes and seers. Now, let's connect this to Jungian pathology. Jung often explored archetypes, the universal patterns of behavior and symbols that shape human experience. One archetype that fits perfectly here is the seer, or the prophet. This figure represents the one who perceives truths hidden from the collective. They have vision, insight, sometimes even a sense of foresight. But what happens to prophets in stories? They're rarely celebrated. More often, they're mocked, doubted, or even persecuted. Why? Because their vision threatens the status quo. This isn't just mythology, it's psychology. When someone embodies the archetype of the seer in real life, they naturally clash with the collective unconscious. The group resists because deep down people fear the truth. Cultural comparison. We can see this in different cultures too.
In some traditions, people who see differently are revered as shamans, mystics, or wise elders. They're given space to exist outside of normal society because their perspective is valued. In other cultures, they're feared, marginalized, or even punished. Think of how witches were treated in Europe during the Middle Ages. So whether you're celebrated or rejected often depends not only on what you see, but on the cultural context you live in. My reflection: the burden of early awareness. Personally, I think one of the hardest parts of seeing what others don't is timing. Sometimes you simply see things too early. Maybe you realize a friendship is unhealthy long before anyone else does. Or you sense a social trend is heading in a bad direction years before it becomes obvious. The problem is, being early often feels like being wrong. And so you carry this strange burden. You know something is true, but you can't yet prove it. And when you speak up, people roll their eyes. I've been in that place many times, and it's not easy. It teaches you patience, but it can also feel like carrying a heavy secret. Coping with the danger of seeing what others don't. So, what can we do about it? How do we handle the danger of seeing what others don't without drowning in loneliness, doubt, or frustration? I'll break it down into 3 approaches. Discern when to speak. Not every truth needs to be shouted from the rooftops. Sometimes wisdom means holding your insight until the right moment. Think of it like planting seeds. You don't throw them all at once, you wait for the right season. Find your tribe. Even if most people don't see what you do, there are always others who do. Finding like-minded individuals can make all the difference. Whether it's through books, communities, or even online, connection eases the burden. Balance vision with humility. Just because we see something others don't doesn't mean we're always right. It's important to stay humble, to test our perceptions, and to be open to correction. Otherwise, we risk falling into arrogance or paranoia.
The fine line between vision and delusion. Here's something we need to be honest about. Not every person who sees differently is actually seeing the truth. Sometimes what feels like vision is actually projection. For example, you might suspect that a colleague secretly hates you. Maybe you notice a tone in their voice, or you interpret their body language as negative. But in reality, they might just be stressed or distracted. In this case, what you're seeing is not their hidden truth, but your own insecurity projected onto them. This is where humility becomes crucial. The danger of seeing what others don't is not just rejection, it's also the risk of self-deception. Jung warned about this through the concept of inflation. When the ego identifies too strongly with an inner truth or insight, it can start to believe it's infallible. So how do we guard against this? By constantly testing our insights, by asking ourselves, is this my perception or is it my projection? This self-reflection helps keep vision grounded in reality. Strengthening yourself as the outsider. If you're someone who often feels like the outsider who notices too much, how can you protect yourself? Here are a few practices. Practice inner grounding. Meditation, journaling, or therapy can help you stay centered. When you're grounded, you can handle rejection without crumbling. Develop emotional patience. Sometimes you'll see things months or even years before others catch on. Instead of rushing to prove yourself, learn to wait. Reality has a way of revealing itself in time. Communicate with compassion. When sharing what you see, tone matters. If you sound judgmental, people will shut down. But if you approach it with empathy, I care about you, and here's what I notice, your words land more gently. Protect your energy. Not every battle is worth fighting. If people aren't ready to see, you don't have to exhaust yourself trying to convince them. Sometimes silence is the wisest choice. Jung's solution, individuation. Now, let's tie this back to Carl Jung's core idea.
Individuation is the lifelong process of becoming your true self, separate from the expectations, illusions, and projections of society. And here's the key. Individuation requires you to see what others don't. It demands awareness of both your personal shadow and the collective shadow. But it also demands strength. Individuation is not about forcing others to see what you see. It's about integrating that vision into your own life. It's about becoming whole, whether others understand you or not. So instead of asking, how do I make everyone see what I see? Jung would encourage us to ask, how do I live authentically with what I know? That shift in focus turns the burden into a path of growth. Cultural reflection. The outsider as innovator. If we zoom out, history shows us something encouraging. Outsiders who saw differently often ended up shaping the world. Artists like Van Gogh painted truths nobody understood in his time, but today his art is priceless. Social reformers like Martin Luther King Jr. or Nelson Mandela saw a vision of justice before it was popular, and eventually the world caught up. Even in science, people like Darwin or Einstein were initially doubted, but their insights transformed human understanding. The lesson? While seeing what others don't can isolate you in the short term, it can also place you at the forefront of progress in the long term. My final reflection. For me, this is the heart of the danger. You might walk alone for a while, doubted, misunderstood, even rejected. But that doesn't mean you're wrong. It means you're early. And yes, it's a heavy burden, but I also believe it's a calling. If you've been given the gift of perception, maybe it's not about convincing everyone else. Maybe it's about living with clarity yourself and trusting that eventually those who are ready will see it too. So let me leave you with this question. Have you ever seen something clearly about a person, a situation, or society while everyone else ignored it? How did that make you feel, and what did you do with that knowledge? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. If you found this video meaningful, make sure to give it a like. It really helps the channel. And if you enjoy exploring psychology, philosophy, and the wisdom of thinkers like Carl Jung, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss future videos. Remember, seeing what others don't is both a danger and a gift. Handle it with wisdom, and it can become one of your greatest strengths. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.